Think about Britain today. We have giant cities, paved highways, and busy train stations. But if we rewind the clock nearly 2,000 years, the landscape looks completely different. The land was home to a people called the Celts. They were organized farmers who lived together in large family groups called tribes. This photo shows what remains of one of their settlements. Instead of modern towns, the Celts built massive circular walls made of earth called hill forts to keep their homes safe. They were also brave in battle. Warriors would race fast wooden chariots across the grassy plains, using iron tools and weapons to defend their land. Look closely at this gold collar. The Celts were also wonderful artists who spent countless hours making beautiful, swirling patterns on metal jewelry. Different groups lived in different areas. In the south, tribes called the Belgi brought new ways of farming, while people known as the Picts made their homes far in the north. So, long before the Romans ever showed up, Britain was already a busy place, filled with farmers, artists, and families. Far across the Mediterranean Sea, in a city called Rome, Italy, another group of people was growing in power. This map shows how the Romans started to grow. They marched out from their home and took over the lands around them, one by one. In 43 AD, their armies crossed the sea into Britain, adding the Celtic lands to their massive empire. This wasn't just a move for the army. The Romans immediately began changing the way the land was laid out and how people lived. To keep track of their new land, the Romans needed a way to get around quickly, so they started a massive building project. The scale of their work is incredible. In the UK alone, they built 55,000 miles of brand new roads. You can see their handiwork here. They used flat, heavy stones fitted tightly together, making roads so tough people still walk on them today. These straight, smooth paths allowed soldiers to march and messengers to run much faster than they ever could on muddy tracks. These reliable roads were the most important tool the Romans had to keep the peace and stay connected across huge distances. But the Romans didn't just build things for the army. They were constantly thinking of new ways to make life more convenient. We still use many of their ideas. They invented a type of concrete that could last for centuries, created the calendars we use to track the months, and even printed the first newspapers. This photo shows the ruins of one of their most clever inventions. Those little brick pillars were used to hold up the floor, leaving a gap for an early type of central heating called a hypocast. This diagram shows the secret. A fire was built outside, and the hot air would flow through the spaces between those pillars, warming the floor from underneath. They also changed how people read. Instead of long scrolls, they began binding pages together to create the very first books. These clever inventions show that the Romans weren't just thinking about winning battles. They were finding new ways to make everyday life easier and more comfortable for everyone. For the Romans, getting clean was a social event. Entire towns would go to public baths to wash, chat, and relax together in big pools. This shows one of those ancient baths still standing in Britain today. The city around it is actually named Bath because of this very building. Rich Romans lived in houses filled with servants who did everything for them, like bringing them food and drinks while they relaxed on comfortable couches. For fun, thousands would go to giant stadiums like the Colosseum. There, they watched gladiators fight, the most famous sport of the day. They also worshipped many different gods and goddesses, like Jupiter and Venus. They believed that each god or goddess looked after a different part of the world, like the sea or the stars. Looking at these letters carved into stone, you can see Latin, the language the Romans spoke. Because it was used for laws and books, it was spoken all over their empire. By bringing their own games, their gods, and their language to every new place they went, the Romans helped all these different countries start to feel like they were part of the same big family. Eventually, after hundreds of years, the Roman Empire grew weak and began to fall apart. As the centuries went by, people in the city of Rome simply built new houses and streets right on top of the old ones, until the original ancient city was completely buried. Today, as you can see in this photo, experts must dig deep underground to find the walls and floors the Romans built so long ago. Even though the buildings are buried, Roman ideas are still the foundation for the way we live today. Every time you check a calendar, read a bound book, or turn on the heat, you're using what Romans invented.